So I was watching the weekly close yesterday, and I saw Bitcoin break above 100K for the first time on the weekly ever. But as I was looking at this chart, I thought to myself, I saw something in the chart, and I thought to myself, hold on a second, if this is true, then the bull market may actually be much shorter than I initially thought. And then I thought to myself, there's so much that I still wanted to do in this bull market. There's so many narratives I still wanted to play. I still wanted to go much more down the risk curve, and I wanted to make the 100x returns that you need to make in a bull market. And I thought, we've got such a short period of time left, I better get to doing all those things. And so I want to show you what I saw in the charts. And then I'm going to show you what I still want to do in this bull market and when I'm going to do it, because it's very important that we expedite whatever we were going to do, because this bull market may actually be a lot shorter than we think. And I'll show you why. I see people saying, why the clickbait? Why the clickbait? It's not clickbait. I'm going to show you today why the bull market may be much shorter than we think, or at least we think. And then I'm going to show you what we need to be doing about it. That's what we're going to be doing. Lots to do today. Actually, we've got a very big show today. I did see today, or just before the show, I saw that 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 tweeted. Well, we know he tweeted yesterday. And every time he tweets this tweet, right? Every time he says still too much blue on the 𝗟𝗓𝗩 tracker, we know that the next day he tells us that he's bought a whole wad of Bitcoin. Obviously, today was no different. So he tweeted that yesterday. And today he announced that they bought another $2.1 billion worth of Bitcoin, 21,550 Bitcoin, which effectively means that when he was sitting here on Friday and calling me Ron, so when he sat here on Friday and called me Ron, I know that Ron thing's never, ever going to go away. I know the other thing that's never going to go away is when he said, let me finish, Ron, because as that happened, I heard that the entire office here went, oh my God, and started cheering like, wow, he managed to shut up the boss. Anyway, while he was sitting here on Friday, looks like he was buying $2.1 billion worth of Bitcoin. Now, that means that 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 now has bought $15 billion worth of Bitcoin since the beginning of November, believe it or not. That is absolutely insane. And I read that actually he now owns about 2.01% of all the Bitcoin that are ever going to be mined, ever. Just think about like the fact that 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 now at the beginning of the bull market, he owns 2.01% of all the Bitcoin. And I know that at the time 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 brushed this tweet from Vinny off, where Vinny said 𝗟𝗓𝗩 is the second most powerful person in Bitcoin after Satoshi. He can single-handedly decide the fate of any contentious issues. And I know 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 brushed this off, but actually when I spoke to Vinny afterwards, it was actually pretty true. Vinny says, what if there is actually a fork in Bitcoin? And then MicroStrategy has to decide which Bitcoin is the Bitcoin that they're going to support, right? After the fork, you basically get a fork, and then you get the miners basically splitting, right? And when they split, you got to decide what the real Bitcoin is. Now, generally, the real Bitcoin is the one with the most mining power. But in a situation like this, where one party owns so much of the Bitcoin, the Bitcoin that may win is the one that will drop the least in price. And if 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 threatens that he's going to dump all his Bitcoins, the miners may support the Bitcoin that 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 actually wants, right? And that got me also thinking, what about the ETFs? Like if there's a fork in Bitcoin now and we get like a new Bitcoin and a Bitcoin, whatever, new Bitcoin, then what will the ETFs do? I mean, will they now hold both Bitcoins? Will they dump one of the Bitcoins and decide which Bitcoin is the one they hold in the ETF? I'd really love to know how that plays out, but we'll talk about that another time. Today, we've got a much bigger show to worry about. And that is when the end of the bull market will actually come. And I fear that it's going to come much sooner than we actually expect. Much sooner than we actually expect. And so I think that everything that we want to do in this bull market, all the money that we want to make in this bull market, I don't know about you, I have a massive target that I want to get to in this bull market. And the truth is that I looked at my portfolio last night and I was like, hold on a second, if this is right, I'm not making my target. And if I'm not making my target, then the problem is that I have to wait 3 years to get to this point again. And so it was a bit of a wake-up call for me, because I was like, shit, I'm not aggressive enough on my portfolio to make the returns that I need to make. And if I don't make these changes really quickly now, then that means that I'm not going to achieve my targets in this bull run. So that's what I want to share with you guys today. If you like that, what I need you guys to do, subscribe to the channel. Look at how fast this is growing. Let's even get to 1.125 1,125,000. 1,125,000 subscribers. Also, I need you to do me a favor, because last week I was on Crypto Live, and so everyone thinks I'm still on Crypto Live. I need you guys to smash the like button. Just obliterate the like button, and I'll show you guys exactly what happened. So let's get into it, because I don't want to waste too much time on intros, but I'm counting on you guys to obliterate the like button. Also, just before we get into it, I was watching Diary of a CEO, and he said that 80% of his people or 70% of his people actually aren't subscribers, whereas 80% of banter people actually are subscribers. It just shows we do have the most loyal community in the world, specifically in the crypto world. Anyway, so let's look at what I was doing, where I was, what was going on. So long story short, I was looking at the Bitcoin chart. I was watching this Bitcoin close, and for the first time on a weekly close, we closed above $100,000, which is, I mean, it's amazing. It just shows that the bull market is very, very, very much intact. Also, if you looked at the others chart, which is the altcoins, which exclude the top 10 altcoins, what you can see is that this others chart closed at the highest weekly level that it's closed since December 27th, 2021. Which, I mean, number one, you've got the breakout of that trend. Number two, you've got a cup and handle over there. And number three, you're about to break the all-time high from November 2021 for the first time in 3 years. So exactly 3 years later, almost 3 years later, we've got the break from the all-time high on the others. And so I think now I'm more convinced than ever that we are actually in this crazy, crazy part of the alt season. We're pretty much over here. And if we are pretty much over here, it means that where we're at right now is that we've got a very short time to actually land up to make returns. Because if you look at what happened in 2020, if you take this point of where we're at now and you take it until the first top, there were only 133 days, which means that theoretically we could be into the top in the next 133 days. But I think for now, what I'm focusing on is to say, with this break of others over here, and this break in Bitcoin and the break of 100,000, it really does feel like we're getting into this really, really parabolic part of the bull market. Let's call it for now the most fun part of the bull market, the part where the majority of the returns are going to make, the part where we're going to get the majority of the upwards and downwards volatility. And we'll talk about the upwards and downwards volatility a bit later in the show. So this is the part of the bull market that we're actually in. We've been waiting. Effectively, we've been waiting 3 years, because if you look at the last time that this happened, it was 3 years ago. It took us 3 years from the top of the previous bull market to get into this alt season. And actually, if you want to be a little bit more pragmatic about it, what you can say is that it took us exactly 4 years from beginning of alt season to beginning of alt season. So we have been waiting 4 years for this moment. And if you did ride the last bull market, you've been waiting 3 years. You can almost say you've been waiting to get to your break evens or to your all-time high for the last 3 years. So we've been waiting a very long time for this, and I think now we're getting into the most fun part of the bull market, as I said. I think today, or specifically right now, it doesn't look like it. It looks like we're having a slight pullback. And specifically, if we look at this pullback, it's probably a healthy pullback. And the reason why I say it's a healthy pullback is because if you look at the funding rates have come back to normality. Like I showed you last week, these funding rates were like at 100%, which means that you were paying 100% to hold a position. So if you look at this ETH position that I'm holding over here, let me show you the ETH. So this ETH position, which is a $7.6 million position, I was paying $7.6 million a year to keep this position actually open. And that's ludicrous to think that that can happen. And so what we're seeing now, specifically with this, I don't know, you can't really call it a pullback because it's just a slight cool down in the altcoin market, is that the funding rates have actually reset. So you can see that we've gone from yellow, which means that the funding rates are exceptionally high, and now we're back in green. And so we could be getting a funding reset. Now, do I think that this funding reset could replace the potential correction? Not really. And the reason why I don't think that that's the case is because when I look at a correction in a bull market, specifically, I look for a correction in the fear and greed index, right? I look at a reset in emotion. And I don't see any kind of reset in emotion. No one has gone from feeling absolutely euphoric on the 23rd of November to feeling fearful. Now, generally in bull markets, when we look at bull markets, and specifically I want to take you back to the 5th of December 2020 when we were here, look how many times we went back down by 50 points. So there was a correction here of 50 points in the fear and greed, and there was another correction here of about 60 points in the fear and greed, all whilst moving up in the bull market. So if you look at, again, if you go back to 2021 and we go to the bull market in 2021, which you could say ended on the 15th of November, you can see that we had multiple periods where the fear and greed index went from 90s all the way back down to the 40s and the 50s, and here it went back down even to the 20s before we actually went back to the all-time high, right? And this pattern here is very important. I want to show you that you've got a lower high, a higher high, and then you've got a lower high here in terms of the fear and greed. This is a very, very important thing, and we'll talk about this in a sec. So I do think that we are going to get some kind of correction soon, because every time we do get to euphoria, as you can see, we get a pullback and we go back down to not being euphoric. But remember, pullback is an absolute opportunity in a market like this where we've got so much conviction, right? So it's just a pullback. It's just it's the leverage reset, and it is an emotion reset, because markets oscillate between fear and greed and fear and greed. And so when we get that pullback, it's just going to take the greed out the market, replace it with fear. Fear, when others are fearful and you have conviction in a certain point, in a certain narrative, then you continue to buy when others are fearful. Someone actually asked me this weekend. I went to a birthday party this weekend. Actually, it was my son's birthday party, and one of the fathers there asked me, said to me, "How is it that you carried on buying when Bitcoin was 15,000 and 20,000? Weren't you scared?" And I said, you know what? When you have such knowledge, in-depth knowledge, and you have such conviction, then the noise doesn't, you don't really hear the noise, right? Or when you do hear the noise, that is your signal to actually land up buying. And so I know I have huge conviction in every single one of the bets that I've made. And so when the market does come down, I'm going to be so ready to buy it, because the noise for me is just a trigger to actually be buying. So let's talk about the actual chart that I was looking at, which gave me the feeling, so to speak, that we were actually going to, that this bull market may actually not be as long as we think. And I think the basic chart, and it's not a very complicated chart, it is this chart over here. This is just the Bitcoin chart, right? And if I look at the Bitcoin chart, and specifically I look at 2017, and I'll start off with 2017, and I say, look, if we assume that we are about here, around December 2016, and we're moving into the parabolic part of the bull market over here, if I take the top to the time till we got the top, it was just over 1 year, which means that if we follow the 2017 cycle, we have about 371 days between, or just call it a year, give or take, between now and the top, right? And that's if you take the 2017 cycle and specifically you take it around Bitcoin. If you look at the altcoins, it's pretty much the same thing. So let's just say, look at the time when the altcoin started breaking out, pretty similar to where we are today, 16th of Jan. And the top of the bull market happened 350 days later for the altcoins, which means that if we follow 2017, we've got about another year left of this bull market. Then the issue is that after that year, so when we get the top, then we're going to start moving down probably about 2 years before the market actually starts recovering again. So like if you look at how this thing chopped, yes, we got a little bit spike here, but we went about 2 years until we actually bottomed. Or you could say actually that we bottomed after 1 year and then we chopped for 1 year before we actually got another bull market again. And then to reach the same period that we got into today, you pretty much had to wait 3 years. So that is like that is the situation. So it kind of means that, look, if you follow the 2017 cycle, you've got a year left to make life-changing returns, after which you're going to suffer for about 2 years. You're going to suffer for about 2 years, and then the bull market's going to start again 2 years later. And that means that you've got 3 years from now until the beginning of the next bull market, more or less. So that is 2017, and that is altcoins versus Bitcoin. But that's not the one that actually worried me. That's not the one that actually worried me. I want to spend some more time on the chart that actually worried me. So the chart that actually worried me was actually the following year, which was 2021. And the reason why the chart of 2021 worried me is because it's very, very, very similar. The setup from a fiscal point of view, from a monetary point of view, from all of that, is very, very, very similar to 2021. So we're going into a change in government. From this time we're going from Democrats to Republicans. Last time we went from Republican to Democrat, which means a whole bunch of different policies. We were also very much in a QE cycle in 2021, and now we're going back into a quantitative easing cycle, a lowering rate cycle, etc. So 2021 is a much more similar setup to where or 2021 is the same as 2024 and 2025. So let's look at that cycle very quickly. So the first thing that you got to look at is the parabolic part of the bull market actually started at exactly the same time. So if I'm looking at Bitcoin, specifically 14th of December, that is when the parabolic part of the bull market actually started. So it started just a little bit before. We had a slight correction, and the real parabolic part of the bull market actually started now, like where we are today, 2 weeks from today, or 1 week from today. But then let's measure how long it took to get to this point over here, which is the first top, which actually happened in May. So if you look at how long it took to get to the first top actually in May, you're talking about 126 days. Well, 120 days. 120 days is 4 months, okay? So basically what we're saying is if we follow the 2020 cycle, then the first top could actually come as soon as 4 months from now, 120 days from now. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not ready for the top in 4 months, because that means that I've only got 120 days to make all the returns that I set out to make in this bull market. And I don't feel like I'm allocated correctly if there are indeed 120 days. Let's look at what happened after the 120 days. So this is the interesting part. When we got to that top part, the top that Bitcoin hit was 65,200. And that was, I think, the day that Tesla announced that they were buying or selling Bitcoin. I don't remember exactly what it was. But at this point over here, we reached the first top, and we reached the Bitcoin top of $65,000. The issue is that at this point over here, we then had to endure a 56% correction in Bitcoin. Just think about that, right? So we went up very, very, very quickly in 120 days. Specifically on Bitcoin, we went up 250%. Just to show you how parabolic we went, we literally we went from $20,000 or $18,000, and we went all the way to $65,000, and that took us 120 days. Now, I don't know if you can understand how quickly 120 days is to 2.5 times the price of an asset. You can almost imagine that Bitcoin goes from $100,000 to $350,000 in the next 120 days. That is amazing. But then we had to endure from 65,000. We had to endure a 60% correction. Okay, and if you look at when the correction happened, it happened roundabout. So the first top was unsurprisingly, in May. Okay, so there was tax selling in April and then in May. Then you had to endure a 60% correction. And what was your reward for enduring that 60% correction? Well, if you endured the 60% correction and you were willing to hold Bitcoin for another 196 days, in other words, another 6 months, then your prize or your reward would have been this much money. So it would have been from there to there, which was 65 to 69, which means that you would have got a 6% reward for enduring a 55% or 60% crash and holding for 200 days. You would have got on this asset, you would have got a 6% return. And so probably the best thing to have done at this point was actually just to sell in May and never come back. And so if you would have just sold in May, because you know that in the majority of the years, the sell in May actually plays out. So you've got every year. So 2024 sell in May played out, 23, 22, 21, you had 2 years, and specifically this year was around COVID, where the COVID correction happened in April, and that was, you could say, a black swan. So you could say that since 2017, every single year except one, if you exclude the black swan, you had huge corrections in the sell in May section, right? And so effectively, your best bet, whether you were playing in Bitcoin or altcoins, your best bet would have actually been to sell here. And then, to be honest, your best bet would have been to come back over here, which was 2 years later, 2 years after the top, and to actually buy the bottom and to carry on trading. Because if you didn't do that, then what happened is you endured a 60% correction to get a 5% recovery, and then you would have suffered for 581 days with the market actually going down. Or let's be a little bit more specific, you would have suffered for a year, 364 days after the top to actually start getting returns, right? And from that point on, to get to the same levels as we were at that level over here, you would have had to wait 3 years. You would have had to wait 2.5 years. And so the best risk return play on Bitcoin would have been to buy now, enjoy the parabolic phase, get to the end of the parabolic phase, which took just 120 days, sell, and come back 2 years later and avoid all the pain and the fuss and everything that you had to do. So that is the first thing that actually started stressing me out, because what I realized was there is a chance that this bull market can end in 120 days. I'm not saying it will, I'm saying it can. And I don't think that my portfolio is well enough positioned for that. Then I analyzed the altcoins. And the altcoins actually paint a very similar picture, right? So we started a very, very, very parabolic run over here. And I'm going to tell you why the altcoins go much more parabolic here. Altcoins went up 6x in 133 days. And the reason why the altcoins start moving here is because in the vacation period, so in the Southern Hemisphere, the vacation period happens in December. So just like in the Northern Hemisphere, Americans get summer holiday and Europeans get summer holiday in June, July, August. In the Southern Hemisphere, we get summer holidays in December, which means that there's a lot less liquidity in December. Now, in a bull market, when there's less liquidity, what happens is people actually pump up the prices in December. And I'm actually expecting the same thing to happen between now and end of December and the inauguration. I think we're going to get a lot of days where we get amazing pumps. Okay, so altcoins also topped after 133 days, so also after 4 months. If you missed the top, you would have had to endure a 61% correction. And your prize for enduring that 61% correction would have been a 15% or so upside on the altcoins. Now, I don't know if it's worth 15% on altcoins after you've done a 6x just to get a 6% return and to hold the money for 6 months. And so I would almost say that this part of the market was unnecessary torture for very, very, very little return. And the return on effort, or the return on pain, or the return on whatever else you want to call it, actually wasn't worth it. Now, the interesting thing is that, again, if you sold the top there, your best point to actually be buying was about 2 years after top. And if you landed up holding until the second top over here, and then you would have had to wait about 1.5 years before actually it was worth buying altcoins. Okay. And so I think what I'm trying to show you guys is that the cycles are very, very similar. And I'll show you another example of how the cycles are similar. Just look at when the retail investors actually came back to the market. So if you look at the retail investors came back to the market somewhere around here, which was the 29th of December, right? And if you look at when the retail investors came back here, the retail investors are coming back now also around December. So it feels like retail only come for a very small part of the bull market. They come from December up until, in this case, they came up until May. And then, remember I showed you what happened with the fear and greed? So the fear and greed never went up as high again. And so you can see it over here. The fear and greed never went up as high as it was after the March 2020, the Feb March 2021. That's the highest that the fear and greed ever got to after that, which means that the initial fear and greed that we actually had was never ever matched again. And actually that reflects what happened with retail investors. The original fear and greed happened around about May. And then there were two other spikes in retail viewers, which correlate to exactly when these spikes over here happen in the fear and greed. But retail investors never, ever came back after the first correction and the first time that they got burnt, which means that if it happens again, you have less exit liquidity and you have less people actually to buy your bags or to push the prices back up, which again pushes the point that the best time to be selling is to be selling when everybody is coming in. And that point where everybody came in actually happened a lot earlier than the end of the cycle. Now, unfortunately, this data didn't go back to 2017, so they didn't monitor this in 2017, but I think that it shows a good picture. It kind of shows that, it shows the following. It shows that we are in the most parabolic part of the bull market now. It shows that things are going to happen very, 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 very quickly now, right? You don't have much time. You've got, in 2021, you had 133 days to get a 700% return on your altcoins, right? 133 days to 7x your bags it's absolutely like manic to try and just think that means that you're doubling your bags every 20 days. Imagine every 3 weeks you're doubling your altcoin bags if we followed exactly the same cycle. Now, I don't think we'll follow the same cycle, but just think about this. Yeah, banana zone is here. It means that every 20 days your bags are going to need to double. So I just want to show you something over here. So this is the first double. So that would be the first double over here. And so the first double actually came here after 1 month. So pretty much every 20 to 30 days, you're doubling your portfolio, you're increasing 1x to your portfolio, which is very, very, very fast. So that is the way the two cycles played out. But now I want to quickly just draw similarities between the two cycles. I want to show you what actually happens from this point on. So effectively, what it means is that cycles are very, very, very similar. So in 2016 to 2020, the halving to the peak, 525 days, the peak to the bottom, 364 days, the bottom to the halving, 518 days. You can kind of see that these are kind of very, 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 very similar. You're talking about like 30 or 40 days or 30 or 40 days difference, which means that, and I think 𝗥𝗡𝗄𝗃 actually did the same thing. So what it means is that in the best case scenario, in the best case scenario, it means that we have about 526 days until we get to the top. That's the longest period that we have. In the worst case scenario, or not the worst case scenario, but in a more conservative scenario, it means that we have about, hold on, let's just quickly try and find it. Let us go here. So in the more conservative scenario, it means that we have about 130 days until we actually get to the top. So we know that we have between 130 days and 350 days, between 4 months and call it 1 year, to get the maximum returns out of our portfolio. So whatever the number that you wanted to make in this bull market, and I know that my number is between, in order for me to hit my number, I need to 4.5x my portfolio between now and the end of the bull market, right? Everything. Now, I know that Bitcoin is not going to 4.5x, which means that I'm going to need to make a lot more money on my altcoins between now and the end of the bull market, right? Because just think about this. If I want to make, let's say that my portfolio is worth $250,000 today, and I want to make $1 million by the end of the cycle. That means that I've got to 4x my entire portfolio in either the next 120 days or best case scenario, the next 350 days. That's it. Otherwise, I just want to show you what happens. Otherwise, if I don't, assuming that I get to this point over here and I don't make the $1 million that I actually want to make, then theoretically, I'm going to endure 2 years of pain only to eventually get my portfolio back to where it is today, or where it is at the top, not being the $1 million, in 3 years. Okay, so just like think about what that means. It means if you don't achieve your objectives now, the next time that you're going to get an opportunity to achieve the objective, or the next time that you're going to get an opportunity to get into an altcoin run, could be 3 years from now. Literally, it could be 3 years from now. So it kind of means that, look, you've got another between 120 days and 350 days, and whatever you don't achieve within the next 120 to 350 days means that you have to then put on hold for 3 years. Okay, now I don't know about you, but 3 years sounds like a hell of a long time for me. And so it kind of means that whatever changes that you're going to make to your portfolio, whatever you need to do it now. Whatever risks you want to take, you need to do it now, because you can't wait, because 120 days goes by much faster than you think. Like, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks now. That's 14 days out of my 120 days gone. That means I've got 106 days left. Okay? It just goes to show that in the event that we play out like 2020 on 2021, and then we get that sell in May situation, or we get a blow off top in April, May, and then we get a sell in May situation, it means that that's it. Then you've got 3 years to make it. So anything that you want to do now. If you want to go full-time crypto, go full-time crypto now. If you want to take more risk now. If you want to launch your project now, because now is the best time to be launching your project. I don't know if you guys have been watching, but we're at that point in the cycle where any token that actually launches actually does very, very well. So like Hyperliquid launched at $3, it went up to $13. Morpho launched and Morpho traded at 75 cents. Morpho is now trading at $2. Movement Labs launched today, $6.6 billion valuation. Now is the time to be launching your project. Now is also the time to be moving down the risk curve. Because as I said to you, I don't know about you, but I have a desire or an aim to 5x, 4.5x my portfolio from here in the bull market. I looked at my portfolio. I've got Bitcoin, ETH, Sol in my portfolio. Those guys ain't going to 4x between now and the top of the cycle. They're not going to, Bitcoin's not going to 4x between now and the top of the cycle, which means that if I want to achieve my objectives, it means I better start moving down the risk curve now, right? And you can see that the market is naturally moving down the risk curve. So you can see that ETH BTC is recovering. What that means is people are rotating from Bitcoin to ETH. And you can see it in multiple places. You can see it on the ETFs. The ETH ETF is starting to get a lot more inflows. The Bitcoin ETF obviously has a lot of inflows, but generally, when you look at the ETH ETF, there's been a change in trend in the ETH ETF, which means that people are starting to move down the risk curve. And it might be ETH's time to shine, as Ash Crypto says. It says 5 months of accumulation, 3 months of capitulation, a bottom formation, and then 5 months of uptrend. But you see, again, there's only 5 months of uptrend. And after this 5 months of uptrend, that is the end of the ETH bull market, right? So like the end of the ETH bull market happens in 5 months if we carry on with this cycle. And so my suggestion is that you really start moving down the risk curve now. If you're in Bitcoin and if you have a plan to hold Bitcoin, then hold your Bitcoin. But if your plan is to rotate Bitcoin or rotate ETH to go lower down the risk curve, then now is the time to do it. Like I'm starting to move, I've moved Bitcoin to ETH, as you saw. I'm starting to also move a lot further down the risk curve over here. And the reason why I'm moving a lot further down the risk curve over here is because I know that right now, the big tokens have run, and specifically the big familiar tokens have run. So like 𝗥𝗪𝗏, 𝗕𝗬𝗕, those aren't real tokens in my mind. Those are all meme coins. I know I'm going to get killed for saying that, but it is what it is. And so I think the next part of your portfolio, the next part of your rotation says that you've got to take a view as to what's going to happen for the remainder of the bull market, right? And then once you've taken a view as to what's going to happen in the remainder of the bull market, then my suggestion is that you start executing as per your view. What you don't want to be doing is you don't want to be waiting for the capital rotation to happen, because if you're waiting for your capital rotation to happen, then chances are you're going to be late. And so I wrote this down, and I think that this is probably the best thing, like the only way I could put it. I said, look, the hardest thing to do is to have a thesis and to wait for the market to catch up to your thesis without making any moves in response to how the market is moving. So I'm going to just add that in, say, moves in response to how the market is moving. So what I mean by this is that you basically have one chance now to think about what are the things that you believe are going to happen in the cycle. Like I believe Avalanche is going to run. I believe Rune's going to have an amazing run. I believe that Sui is going to explode. I believe that Seapool's going to run. Like all these things need to happen. You've got to take your bets, and then the hardest thing that you're going to have to do is to take your bets as per your thesis, and then to sit back and watch the market do its thing and not move your narrative and not actually move back to the market. In other words, if your narrative is that we're at the end of meme coins and we're going to go move into gaming coins, you should be putting your chips onto the gaming coins now before they actually start running. And then the hardest thing to do is to just sit there and not to touch your chips while the market actually does this thing and tries to tempt you to play in today's narrative, right? And that for me is one of the hardest things to do, is like, because I'm human and because I have emotion. And so like I see things moving and I'm like, I want to play into the narrative. And the truth is that I shouldn't want to play. Wow, is render up 91% today? No, it can't be. Oh, okay, that's not. Let's just refresh. Okay, so the idea is to this is the time where you want to be moving very, very fast down the risk curve, knowing that your worst case is you've got 4 months, and your best case is that you've got 10 months to actually be out of this market. And after that, you've got 3 years of hell before we can actually land up making proper money again. And so make those moves right now. Make the moves right now. Have a thesis, put your chips on the thesis, and then do your best to wait for your narrative or your bet to actually play out, and then basically close your eyes and wait for the thing to actually play out. So that is why I got so stressed about the market. I got stressed because I was like, my portfolio is not there, and I need to make very aggressive changes to my portfolio if I'm going to meet my objective in time for the end of this bull market, right? I want to actually just touch on one other thing, which is corrections, right? So in this part of the market, the dips are definitely for buying, right? So like if we get a dip in this part of the market, and I know we will get a dip, then it's very, very, very much one of very, very, very few opportunities that you have to actually, you're probably going to have, in fact, let me actually fast forward a little bit, right? So if I look at the number of corrections that your average cycle has, right? So if you look at between the halving and the top, generally what you have is you have 6 corrections. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 corrections. And if you look at when we broke the previous Bitcoin all-time high in 2017, there were 3 corrections from that point to the top. So again, 2017, there were 6 corrections. There were about 30% real corrections. There were about 30%. And 3 of them came after we broke the previous all-time high. The next 2021, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 corrections, or 5 corrections before we got the first top, and in total we had 8 corrections if you take that second top. But remember, I thought we should be out here, which means you should have had five corrections, of which 2 or 5 came after the break of the all-time high, right? In this bull market, or in this phase of the market, we've had 3 corrections, and we haven't had any corrections since the break of the previous all-time high. Which means that if you work on the statistics, we've got probably 3 corrections left between now and the time that we actually get to the top. And in general, the corrections have been less violent. So you're talking about between 25 and, I don't know, maybe 25. Yeah, we had a 30% correction. But the idea is to say probably between now and the top, you've got 3 more corrections. You've got 3 more opportunities to actually be buying this dip, right? You've got 3 more opportunities left to actually be buying this dip. And so, as I said to you, I am now preparing my portfolio for a dip. We haven't had any corrections since the breach of the all-time high. If I look at 2021, the first major, let me just quickly go to 20. So 2021, if you look at the correction, you can't really see it over here. Well, in fact, you can see it. We can measure it over here. So the correction went down 16%, or a bit more. It was about 20%, and that was in the week. Or that was before the actual inauguration. So that was before the actual inauguration. So we've now gone 59 days without any kind of correction. So we've got 59 days without a proper correction. And remember that in the next 120 to 350 days, we are due to have at least 3 corrections, if not 4 corrections, as per the statistics. And so what does that mean? It means that you have 3 more opportunities if you're not playing the up only game. In other words, you are trading in and out, and you're not just sitting back and holding your whole portfolio, which is what I prefer to do. But I'm human and I actually love the trading, to be honest. So for me, I am preparing myself for one of those corrections. Now, what does preparing myself for one of those corrections mean? You can see that I've closed a lot of my leverage long positions, and I've actually opened some leverage short positions. So I've got a leverage short on RSR, which is actually playing out very, very well. I'm $80,000 up on that one. I've got another leverage short on XRP, which is it's a very scary short because I know that it's got a big army. But I just figure that when the market comes down, the tokens that has shot up the highest are going to come down the hardest, right? And so for me, those are the ones that I want to be short. And so I'm happy to actually be short on those tokens. And so right now, what I'm doing is I'm preparing for one of those 3 corrections. I'm about 17% in cash. I'm taking out cash slowly, and generally I'm taking out the cash by closing my leverage positions. I'm obviously not touching my long-term portfolio because my long-term portfolio, I'm very bullish. I'm super, super, super bullish about crypto as a whole. I just think that we may have one or two corrections on the way, but ultimately we are in this part of the market where we have 120 days or 130 days, or maybe best case 250, 300 days to actually get to the top. So that is basically how I see it. That is where I think the end of the bull market will be. A couple of things that I recommend that you do if you haven't already done these things. I think that you should do them. And again, you've got about 120 to 150 days to actually do them. Let me show you what I would do if this works. So number one, if you are in this bull market and you want to maximize your returns in the next 120 days, just do Sniper School. Let me explain to you why I think Sniper School is such a good thing to be doing now. They've reduced it down to 10 days. So you basically learn beginning to end of trading in 10 days. Okay, now 10 days out of 120 days, you can start like very soon. 10 days. And that means that in 10 days, you're actually a better trader, which means that you've got 110 days left to actually get the rewards of your trading school. So if you've been delaying it, now we're going into December period, join the Sniper School.
Journey bid for you.
Hi, 𝗟𝗪𝗓. I'm completely new in all this world. I invested knowing nothing, and I started to see if there is someone on YouTube. And then I saw you. I got in the school, and I was talking with my wife. I was saying, there is this guy. He predicts what it's coming. He sees the charts and he knows where it's going. It's incredible. Yesterday, you were talking about courts, about all those stuff, and I thought, oh my God, I know the matrix now. I mean,
so I must say, Sheldon does give you that amazing clarity. You see, he does see the charts. Now, look, there's a free Sniper School. Honestly, just go and join the link here. It starts in 23 hours. It starts in 1 day, which means that in 11 days you can actually be trading. The next thing is, if you haven't already got yourself an exchange account, sign up with the exchange account. From tomorrow, we're going to start drawing boxes. And remember, if you have signed up, we draw the boxes. Now every day there's something different in the boxes. Like here, there's $10,000 in box 1. In box 2, there is a ledger, and in box 3 today, there is $1,500. So basically every day we're going to be drawing, if you signed up, every day we're going to be drawing names, and and if your name has been, if you've signed up and if you've drawn, we've drawn your name, you'll win whatever's in the actual box. And one of the boxes has $100,000. Then lastly, the thing that I would encourage you guys to do is to go to Bitfunded, because if you don't have a lot of money, because a lot of people don't have a lot of money in this bull market and they want to make money, what Bitfunded allows you to do is to trade with other people's money. So here's how it works, right? You pay $79 and you get $5,000 of demo money, right? Now, if you get 8% in the first stage and 5% in the second stage, it means that you're then trading with other people's money and you keep 90% of the profits. Now, you can take out whichever one you want. So in other words, if you want to trade with $10,000, you just pay $99. The most you can lose is $99. But if you can pass stage 1 and get 8% and stage 2 and get 5%, then you're trading with other people's money. So this is an amazing, amazing, amazing product for people that are here in the bull market, don't have enough money, but really want to, so people don't have a lot of money, but really want to learn to or trade with other people's money. So you can do it on Bitfunding. It's called a prop trading firm. All right, so that's my thesis. That's where I think we're going to go. Those are the things that I think you need to do. Remember to sign up to the exchanges, because tomorrow we're going to start drawing. There's a Rolex in one of the boxes. There is $100,000 in another one of the boxes, and tomorrow we're actually going to start doing it. Otherwise, I will see you guys again tomorrow. Until then, trade well, my friends.